So my warm greetings to all of you and sharing my happiness of being together and having a chance to meditate today. I believe it's a wonderful thing for people to meditate together. And it's hard for me to imagine that I would have gone very far with Buddhist practice if I hadn't been practicing in community and meditating with other people. So thank you for this. And one of the valuable ways of staying present is to recognize how we lose our present moment awareness, how we lose attention in the present when things are either pleasant or unpleasant. In conscious and unconscious ways, subconscious ways, we will get pulled into worlds of pleasure, pleasantness, comfort, and pulled away or pushing away things which are unpleasant, painful, uncomfortable. So in this meditation practice, at some point I'll suggest that you bring your attention to this simple phenomena of not exactly what is happening, but rather in the ways in which what is happening is pleasant and unpleasant. And just see if you can notice, based on that, the reactions you have, the for and against that might happen. So to take a meditation posture, and that's a combination of being alert and also has some pleasantness to it. Something that has some degree of contentment or coziness or settledness, and the balance of alert and comfortable, alert and relaxed. And for people who are new to meditation, maybe it takes a while to discover or for the body to adjust itself to a meditation posture so that it starts feeling comfortable. But it's one of the great gifts of meditation is to find a meditative posture that, at least for a while, will feel home, feel like, oh, I'm here. So happy to be here in this posture again. And then to close your eyes and as a way of turning your attention inward into your body, you might take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Deep breaths that don't leave you winded, but that are comfortable for you to take. Breathing in deeply, and then as you exhale, just let go, if you can, of all things outside of meditation. See if you can let your concerns and thoughts drift away like bubbles or balloons drifting off into the sky. And for you then to settle more and more into the embodied posture, the embodied experience of sitting. And then to let your breathing return to normal. And generally, tension in the body is uncomfortable or has some degree of unpleasantness. And relaxing that tension has some degree of pleasantness or of relief. You might scan through your body to see where there's places of holding or tension that might be relatively easy to relax and soften. Maybe relaxing on the exhale. And if you can do that, maybe noticing how it goes from being on the pleasant side of things to more the pleasant side, the unpleasant side of things to the pleasant side of things. It doesn't have to be dramatic. And there are micro muscles in the face that sometimes are held tense all the time. So it's habit, or we don't even know it's so constant. But maybe imagining that the muscles of the face are pulled in too tight to the skull, and that finally they can fall away and rest in the skin that holds them. As you exhale, relaxing the muscles of the face. Imagining perhaps that you're holding your shoulders away from Mother Earth. And this Mother Earth, the gravity, is inviting us, welcoming the shoulders to come closer. And that as you exhale, you respond to that request, that invitation, relaxing the shoulders to the pull of gravity. And imagining the belly feels safe and content. Everything is okay. And so the belly can relax and release, soften, and maybe hang forward and out as you exhale. Perhaps imagining the whole body is like a block of ice, and that as you exhale, the body melts, softens, becomes more fluid. And then bringing your attention to your breathing. And to begin, just following the body's experience of breathing. Gently opening and opening and opening to each inhale and each exhale. Experiencing it in the body, one after the other. And noticing if there's anything pleasant about the experience of breathing. Don't worry if there isn't. But if you notice anything pleasant, it could just be a short moment during the exhale or during the inhale, or between the inhale and exhale. be sure to feel that pleasure each time you come to that part of breathing. You're allowed to feel the pleasure as a way of staying interested and connected to breathing. And as you're sitting with your breathing, different things will get your attention, maybe peripherally, maybe strongly. And whatever it is that comes into your attention, notice whether it's on the pleasant side of things or the unpleasant side. Or is it in between, it's really neutral? Take the time to notice this feeling tone it has, pleasant or unpleasant. And then return to your breathing. Maybe noticing the pleasant and unpleasant in breathing. Opening to the breathing. The embodied experience of breathing. Staying with your breathing and doing so with some simplicity. Simplicity and continuity. And if anything gets your attention that's not the breathing, notice whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. noticing pleasant and unpleasant in your experience. And in doing so, maybe also notice the mind's reaction to that, the way the mind might be for or against. And keep it that simple, without analysis or probing further. And clearly note, clearly recognize how it is, and begin again with your breathing. Without getting pulled into the world of for and against. Recognizing that feeling is there, and beginning with your breathing again. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, to feel within you, or remember within you, something that's quite pleasant because it's healthy, it's a form of happiness and well-being, a place that's cozy or healthy, a place of freedom. And this ability, whether you can feel it now or not, to have a deep sense of well-being, to not be struggling for and against, but to be free. And then turn your attention to others and see if, as much as this would be wonderful for you, how wonderful it would be. Think how wonderful it would be for others to experience the same thing. It might be quite wonderful for you, for other people to have this happiness. They're more likely to treat you well. And maybe you're more likely to treat them well. May it be that our practice brings us to greater and greater health, happiness, well-being. And as we become happier, to wish it for others as well, to support others so they can have a sense of well-being. And may we live our lives supporting the well-being of all beings, ourselves and others. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. And may all beings be free. So at the end of this little talk I'm going to give, I'll also make an announcement or two. So, continuing these talks on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It could also, the word foundation, it can also mean the 4 applications of mindfulness, the 4 areas of applying or developing mindfulness, developing awareness. And the second foundation is Vedana in Pali, Vedana, and it's a word which most generally just means feeling. It could also mean experiencing. It could also mean knowing. It has to do with how the present moment experience that we have, how it's felt, how it's known, how it's experienced, in its directness, in its immediacy, before interpretations and stories we make about it. And of course, we have many feelings like this. And the Buddha, and Vedana refers to all of them, and there's many different kinds of feelings for sure. But in the practice of mindfulness, the Buddha points out that there are three fundamental feelings, that all feelings have these qualities, these characteristics. And it's and to notice how feelings can be pleasant, how feelings can be unpleasant, and how feelings can be neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And so sometimes people in the Vipassana world will say Vedana means pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. But it's not really quite right. It's Vedana is feelings more generally. And then we focus on how feelings are pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And the reason for that is that feelings, these pleasant and unpleasant, is very much the trigger for being for or against, for wanting or pushing away or aversion. And so it kind of works like this, maybe, that if someone really likes candy, and so they just can't stop eating candy, eating lots of candy, and then they get sick, physically sick and bloated, and often feel kind of, tired, and after a while they realize this eating candy doesn't work. So, okay, they stop. It's great. So they start eating cookies instead. And eating lots of cookies, the same thing happens. They say, well, I'll stop eating cookies. Then they eat cake. And then they stop eating cake when they realize how terrible they feel. And then they just start drinking a lot of sugary sodas because, the other things didn't work. Eventually, they discover that what the common denominator is for all these things that they're eating in an addictive way is sugar. Oh, it's sugar that's making me feel so addictive, and it's sugar which is making me feel so bad. So why don't I just stop eating sugar? And so then that applies to all ways, all things that have sugar in them. And so it's seeing the common denominator, and that applies to all situations of all the cravings for these things that have their root in sugar. So in the same thing, there can be pleasant, all kinds of things can be pleasant, and we can have all kinds of relationships with that pleasantness. We can have desires and wanting and addictions. And so sometimes we pursue a lot of pleasures, but it's not necessarily that the activities we're doing that we're pursuing the feeling of pleasure, the feeling of comfort, the feeling of joy or exuberance or whatever it might be. But it's not really the thing we're doing. It's the pleasantness it provides us, the hit of pleasant sensations and hormones and whatever goes on. And the same thing with unpleasant. We can react to unpleasant in ways that are not appropriate if we don't understand what it's about. When I was in my 20s, I had, for 7 years, I had a wheat allergy. And I'd never heard of wheat allergies before and wasn't well known back then. And so before I realized it was a wheat allergy, eating wheat, I worked at a bakery, so I had lots of bread to eat, and I was breathing in probably flour. And so I'd feel really bad. And my way, when I felt bad, I wanted to comfort myself. And one of the comfort foods for me was baguettes. And I had lots of access to baguettes. So I'd eat baguettes, and I would feel worse. And since I felt bad, I would eat more baguettes. I didn't make the correlation. And at some point, it dawned on me that maybe it's all the wheat I'm eating. And I read about it, and then I discovered there were allergies, and wheat allergies, and then I stopped eating it, and I felt better. And I didn't believe it, so then I would eat a little bit, and sure enough, I'd feel bad, and back and forth for a while. And so it was the craving for, there again, pleasure again, in reaction to feeling unpleasant. I had to get better, I had to fix it, and I was doing the very thing that would make it worse for myself. And but once I discovered the common denominator, the wheat, then I could find health. So this idea of looking at the pleasant and unpleasant of experience is to look at that common denominator of many different things. And if we can learn to identify how we generally respond to what's pleasant, and how we react to what's unpleasant, we get a lot of overview, a lot of wisdom. It kind of like becomes a key for a lot of different areas of our life. We don't have to then do sophisticated analysis of situations. We just have to realize that, I'm reacting because of pleasant and unpleasant. So if you go to before COVID, if you go to a crowded party or something, and you find no one knows you, you don't know anyone there, no one knows you, and everyone's having a good time with each other, and you're left out, and it's kind of an unpleasant music, and maybe some of the conversations are unpleasant, and maybe there's a lot of smoke in this place, cigarette smoke, and you realize you really feel off and feel bad, and you start analyzing or interpreting it, and one popular way to do that is to blame oneself. I'm so unlikable, no one likes me, and everyone's avoiding me, and that's why I feel so bad. Or these people, I need to understand what these people are all about, and kind of analyze them and try to understand how I can blame them for something about how I'm feeling. And then it dawns on you, this pleasant and unpleasant things, and you say, oh, wait a minute. The whole situation is just unpleasant. And I don't have to understand exactly why it's unpleasant or what's triggering the unpleasantness in order to not react to the unpleasant. It's just unpleasant. And I know how to be with unpleasant. With unpleasant, you just let it be. Unpleasant, you don't pick it up, you don't push it away, you don't look for blame to self or others. It's possible just to be aware of it and hold it in a spacious mind, hold it in a relaxed mind. And the same thing with pleasant. You come to a situation that's really, really pleasant, and maybe it's a table full of pastries. I once taught a retreat at a monastery. We rented a space. Someone rented space in a monastery in Missouri, and there was a meditation hall had a little room on the side, and the meditators kept going into that room back and forth over and over again, and I had no idea what was they doing there. And finally I went to check that room, and it was full of pastries. I couldn't believe how much pastry there was, and it seemed like there was a different pastry culture in Missouri back then than there was in California. And the meditators were eating a lot of sweets. So very pleasant. But I wonder how good it was for their meditation. But to see, pleasant, I want that. But then think, I don't need to do that. I can be free. And discovering freedom in relationship to pleasant and unpleasant is a wonderful thing. It's freedom. To be able to go into an unpleasant place, uncomfortable place, and be comfortable. To be able to go and approach something pleasant or experience something pleasant, and certainly be comfortable, but comfortable enough that there's no addiction, there's no leaning, no grabbing, no wanting more, just allowing it to be. The reason why this is important for meditation is that if the mind is operating, chasing after pleasure, wanting comfort, reacting to it being there, holding on to it, or pushing away, or being upset with unpleasant and trying to fix it and push it away, the mind won't settle. And if it won't settle and calm down, you won't discover any freedom. The mind will live in its reactivity. And so to start understanding this common denominator, it's kind of like a little key. It's very simple, and sometimes sophisticated people feel it's too simple. But simplicity sometimes is the key. You come to the common denominator, out of which so much reactivity arises, so many behavior, complicated political philosophies and religious philosophies can have their source in this simple thing. This is pleasant, I want more of it. This is unpleasant, I want it to go away. It's a huge drive of human behavior. And to sit and be quiet and see pleasant and unpleasant our reaction to it, and to learn to be free of reactivity, or be free of picking up and being involved in the reactivity. And eventually just seeing that between pleasant experience, there's a gap before reactivity kicks in. And then just in that gap, to just leave the pleasant being the pleasant, and leave the unpleasant to be the unpleasant. Then the mind can start discovering peace and freedom, calm, contentment, well-being, that is almost, it is not dependent on the things of the world. A kind of deep inner pleasure, deep inner contentment and happiness, which is not of the skin, not of the world in a sense of how the world is, but something deep inside, maybe something of the heart. So the second foundations of mindfulness. So you might explore this today in the next 24 hours. You might, as you go about your day, you might just notice clearly when something is pleasant and unpleasant, and see if it's just that, pleasant and unpleasant, or whether you also have reactions to it, and does it prompt behavior and feelings and all kinds of things. So, thank you so much. So as for announcements, I have two announcements. One is on Friday, at 7:45 or so when we finish here. I'm going to set up a Zoom room, and we can have one of our community meetings we have from time to time. And I'll make sure to use the large Zoom account, so there's room for everyone. And that's a time maybe to ask some questions and do Q&A, have some discussion. And also we'll do one session of breaking you into breakout groups, maybe groups of 5, so that you can meet some other people in this in our YouTube meditation community. And so I'll post the information, the Zoom link, on the IMC What's New, maybe on Thursday, and on the calendar IMC, and also in the chat here I'll post it on Friday as well. So there'll be different ways of getting it. And so that's one announcement. The second announcement is that it is a community, and I think of all of you on YouTube now as being part of the IMC community. And one of the things I do every year is to send out an end-of-the-year letter to the community, and it's a fundraising letter. And so I don't know if that interests any of you, but as part of the community, maybe you're interested in reading the letter and so forth. So that's also on the What's New page on IMC's website, and also I think it's been put on the underneath the video here on YouTube, on the YouTube kind of description of what we are. There's a link to it as well. And so thank you for this morning, and I look forward to continuing this series tomorrow.